fiction, science fiction, horror, fantasy, crime, LGBT, thriller.
You have now entered the House of Mystery.
Welcome back into the House of Mystery. I'm Al Warren. Got Mr. Michael Hawley. Michael the Guns Hawley. That's the co-host.
It is correct.
Yeah. Well, anyway, so and you weren't watching the Golden Globes. So what's going on with you? Watching football? What is wrong with
the
you?
Buffalo Bills, and then apparently we got to play Tricia's probably Denver next week Saturday, right, Tricia?
I think so. I think that's what I heard this morning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
see, you watched the Golden Globes, didn't you? Watch it, Tricia?
I didn't do either of those.
Yeah.
I was at a dinner with my family, so.
That's better anyway. I didn't. I just watched the bits. I get all the info, you know. So what's going on we got joining us, the third person is an author, and we've had her on before, and she's got a new book out called Of Witches and Vampires, Kingdom Journals, and it's Tricia Copeland, so thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for having me.
Well, so what's going on with Tricia? What's been going on in your life since we last had you on?
Right. So I think probably last time I talked about my Fae series, the Realm Chronicles Fae series, and I wrapped that series up last July with the finale To Be a Fae. And that was really fun because it's really the culmination of two series, the Kingdom Journals as well as the Realm Chronicles series, or a crossover series, because the main antagonist or villain wasn't thwarted in the first series, so got another life in the second series. And the Realm Chronicles finishes with getting rid of in some unknown manner that we won't expose. So that wrapped up the Realm Chronicles series, which is always very exciting to have readers be able to read the finale to anything, right?
So it feels good for you when it's all wrapped and done, so to speak. You don't have a problem letting go, so to speak.
No, sometimes I do. I mean, with the Kingdom Journals, I did, and I revived those characters with this Realm Chronicles series. They come into the series, and the characters are working together to fight this evil villain, Sonia, who's now a witch spirit. And so I was able to keep those characters alive. But in this case, with the Realm Chronicles, I'm happy to give them a happily ever after. I put those characters through a lot of really horrible things, so I just want them to rest and not have any further strife.
So who are you really putting through all those things? I mean, those characters were really people you know, right?
Yeah, it was me. Yeah. I can't go back and hurt them or i.e. myself anymore.
You've had it, all that. Well, it's good to take a break from that punishment sort of thing, self-punishment, all that stuff. So what is this then, Of Witches and Vampires? Like, explain that. Like, what is this book, and what's the premise of this?
Right. So I guess every author is going to have a different take on the origin of witches and vampires. And when I started the Kingdom Journal series with Kingdom of Embers, I created that story or that world and how vampires and the witches came to be in their earliest genesis, I guess. And this Of Witches and Vampires tells you about that. So you can read it before you read the series, and for people who like vampire lore, especially, you'll like that story. It's a little bit of a Lilith retelling. And for people who, I guess I have had a little pushback because it is very biblical. So if you have a literal interpretation of the Bible, you may not like the fact how Lilith and Adam and Eve are, maybe more Adam and Eve being depicted in this story. But I think it's a fun way to say, okay, where did these creatures come from?
Does that affect you when you're writing the book, or is it just something that comes out after?
I definitely have to world build in the beginning, because if you don't world build and lay the groundwork, you don't really understand your characters, right? You don't know their backstory, their histories, their ancestral stories or their family, I guess, legacies. And if you talk about families that way and these beings that way, so you really have to know all of that back matter, even if you're starting, in this case, like 6,000 years in the future to when the Genesis story is so that you set the stage, especially for witches and vampires, what powers they have, where they came from. Different lines of the witches have different powers based on who they were sired by. So all of those things come into play in who your characters are presently. So you really have to set those rules out in the beginning for yourself. Even if you don't you can't just dump all that on a reader at one time because the reader's going to be like, okay, this is way too much. I'm lost. I'm leaving now, right? So you sprinkle things in, but then I think it's fun to go back and really dive into those Genesis stories once the reader is like really in love with these characters and has to know more.
A question on that is, you have these readers that they know all the detail, and what if you make a subtle mistake? Are you afraid of that you forgot about something in your world that you just created?
Well, there have been instances where I needed the characters to do certain things and they couldn't get there because of the rules I had made. So you don't want to ever break those rules. So you have to find a way around the rules if you've dug yourself into kind of a literary hole, so to speak, or gotten up against a wall that you've created this rule and now you need or want to break it for whatever reason. But I don't do that because readers will come back and say, hey, wait, no, this is not allowed because that's the rules you set up in the beginning. So to have that groundwork and to have your stories laid out mostly is probably the best thing. I am not always great about that. And I'm maybe more of a cautionary tale. The way I had to get rid of my villain was definitely different than I would have envisioned it because of the rules of my world. But I think that makes a writer more creative too, right? So I had to be very creative with how I was, what tools I was giving my characters.
Well, when in doubt, just kill them off.
Yes and no, but I mean, can a soul ever be ended? I mean, if they're souls, can they be ended? I don't know.
It was all a dream.
It was all a dream. Okay, there we go. That's the answer to everything.
It was a dream. And you wake up and it's, How do you keep track of all this? There's so much going on because you've got a whole world and then you've got all the characters and then all the different storylines and stuff. How do you keep track of that?
Well, initially it was like handwritten in a notebook. And then my editor said, no, this needs to be an electronic document. So I transferred it to an electronic document, which, has all the world building, all the characters, and I keep adding to that. And I wasn't a big fan of doing outlines, definitely not before I wrote, and I'm still not a fan before I wrote, but my editor did slip me into doing an outline after I finished like each chapter so we could go back and quickly see like, okay, what just happened? And if we need to search for what happened to this character and what was this character doing last, we can find that more easily. Definitely not in the beginning was I was good, as I know some authors keep spreadsheets of like every scene of every character, and they have a whole group of editors that will check and double check. I mean, I have my editor, my proofreader, some arc readers, and those people help me out.
Has there ever been, like, has a character or maybe even the story itself taken a direction that you didn't want it to go into necessarily? Maybe you didn't plan it out, but it just happened?
I definitely have had that with a character. I had a character in the second book of the Kingdom Journal series. The Kingdom of Darkness is the name of that book, but he was supposed to be a villain character. I don't want to give too much away, but I liked him too, like he was too good at pretending to be good. So I didn't keep his storyline what I thought his storyline was going to be. And then he ended up having his own book, about just from his point of view. So that was like a little bit deviation from what I intended for his character to be, and he ends up being more of a major character than I had planned initially.
Things like that, because it just sort of happens and stuff. And it's such an elaborate and story with a lot of books and a world and all this stuff going on and many characters. Is there ever sort of like, did you take this on wanting to tell something or get a point across to people? Did you take on this whole project with an initiative? The
funny thing is, so of witches and vampires, my publicist was like, you have a vampire book. I'm like, yes, this is a vampire book I wanted to write, because when I initially started this whole series, I wanted to write a vampire book. Vampires are my favorite characters. I always thought I would write about them. And my character was a vampire witch hybrid. And she, just how I kept developing her character and what her challenges were, and it turned into a witch book or a witch series. So at that time we had 3 witches, which are a trinity of witches that had to come together to break a curse on the witch lines. And so each book was told from the voice of a different witch. But then I thought, well, I still want my vampire book. And so the prequels to the Kingdom Journals series, which include Of Witches and Vampires and Kingdom of the Damned, are those vampire books, basically, that I didn't write in the main series, but now I have my vampire books.
And it's young adult?
It is young adult, yes. The prequels go into more adult, although they're more adult. They are adult characters. The prequels are adult characters. But a young adult person could read them too, like they're a PG-13 story. And I guess to answer your question, Alan, so yeah, it was written with themes, like the vampire witch hybrid character. She's 17 years old. She's about to go out into the world of college or whatever she's deciding to do. But is she a witch or is she a vampire? And which community does she fit in? Where does she go in her life? So themes, coming of age themes like that. Definitely acceptance in that we see beings, especially the Fae, had some prejudice against the vampires because they were, not of the creator, quote unquote, my world. And, the old guard of the Fae were like, no, we don't ever consort with the vampires because they're these evil creatures. And then we have our new fairy come along. It's like, well, can you really categorize all vampires as being bad, right? So themes like that, and each book sort of takes on a different theme.
So the young adult, then eventually they're going to be adults, or is this immortal vampires she's stuck at 17? Is that your world?
So my vampires can die, but they usually live like 900 years. So they grow to mature, they're born. Number one is different from other vampires, but they grow to maturity at age 18, and then they basically look the same for 800 more years until they start decaying a little bit and eventually do die of natural, quote unquote, natural causes. So they have extended lives, but not forever immortal extended lives, which is the same for my witches. My witches also live about the same amount of time. So they don't have as many, like, the keen senses and the speed and the strength that vampires do, but then they have magic. So it kind of balances them out.
That sounds like Mike's age, he's pretty old.
Hey, that's all right. It's Victorian. I was born then.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking, It's just, so it's all done now, right? It's all finished.
Right.
So how do you pick up the pieces after you've done something like this? Like, do you take a break now, or do you just jump into something different?
Right. Well, I write romance too. So my hangover from writing fantasy is my break is writing romance, where, the worst thing that can happen is somebody breaks up with you. So that is sort of my respite from writing about fantasy. I still do have in my mind that I might go back, because Of Witches and Vampires is like the Genesis story, basically. And then I have Kingdom of the Damned, which starts about 400 years before the main series does and brings you up to the main series. But then I have this whole space between the genesis of Sonia and the Witches and the Vampires, and Sonia being the villain / antagonist, and the 16th century. So what happened in that time span that created the villain that she becomes it's a story I have in the back of my head, and I haven't fully fleshed out yet, but can definitely be written.
Well, what influenced you with all of this? Like, so when you're doing the dialogue and the voices of the characters and what's going on around them and how they're acting and reacting and all that stuff, where do you think you get that kind of a desire? Where does that influence come from?
I've always been interested in magic and vampire and fantasy beings. I mean, the first series that I can remember loving was Dorothy and the Wizard in Oz, with all these different characters. I don't know if you knew that was like a 13-book series. And so it's just a magical world where I guess you can create anything you want, right? You create your own rules. And I guess I just always kind of like living, quote unquote, living. My brain lives outside the norm, maybe.
I wonder why that is. Like, why would you, if you were given a choice to live in one of the worlds you've created compared to the world you live in now, would you take it?
I think I would. Like, the Fae live in this Middle Earth realm where they don't have computers or electricity, but at the same time, they don't have a lot of the strife that our human realm has. So it kind of sounds appealing sometimes.
Yeah. Do they have running water and toilets?
They have running water, but it's, it's powered by wells and up, water rolls downhill. So.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a lot less complicated in a way.
Right. But also, I mean.
But I guess in its own way it'd be complicated. It's
harder work. It's physical work rather than maybe mental work.
And so do you have any characters that you have a problem letting go?
I haven't. No, like I said, I'm happy with how I left these characters in the Realm Chronicles, and they have their happily ever afters. There were some new characters that I brought into the finale. They had to assemble like a team of like 12 different beings, like different types of beings. So now I have these other 12 or 10 or so beings that were new to the story that could get also backstories or stories going forward. Like, what are these new characters doing? There's a Nyx, and there's a Sprite, and there's a werewolf. And so all those characters can maybe have jump off stories too. So you might see the Realm Chronicles characters in the background in those stories. And I'm still fleshing that out, but I think that could be fun.
I just can't imagine what kind of imagination you have. Are you thinking of your readers when you write a series like this? And I mean, right from the get-go and, the very first book to the end, do you ever incorporate what you think the readers would like anywhere along the line or even from the beginning? Does it never enter your mind?
Oh, it definitely enters my mind. I mean, when you're writing, you always want to think, what does the reader want to see next, or what do they want to know about next? And I am probably my reader, so that probably helps me because I read vampire fiction, witch fiction. I watch the series on television, whatever the different platforms are. And so I am my target reader, along with, all the way down to young adult, age 13 and up are my target readers. But I love that YA fantasy fiction. So, but yeah, as an author, I think you should always be thinking about, well, what does the reader expect? How far can you go out of what they expect? Can you change a vampire that much and they'll still think it's a vampire? Or can you change a witch and they'll still think it's a witch? Every author wants to put their different spin on it, but you still have to stay a little bit within the confines of what the reader would expect. I have a couple of times felt like I've gone out on a limb and did something to the characters that was, too sad but I guess the thing is, like, if you don't have the strife and the turmoil in your characters, then you don't also have the redemption and the highs. You have to have the lows and the highs. So, I mean, I kind of temper that you can't give every reader everything they expect to.
Yeah, like, so when you're living today and you get up and you watch the news, like say you're the football team or the Golden Globes or whatever else is going on. and also what the kids are doing today. You're on TikTok and you see them dancing or doing whatever. But does what's happening in the world around you, in your life, does it ever kind of influence or maybe even interfere in how you're writing what you're doing?
It did a little bit, yeah. So this series was interesting because, it's a trinity of witches that have to come together to break this curse. But this trinity of witches is only born every 100 years. And so up to the point of when our story starts, the three witches in the history of every 100 years have never all found each other, right? So in this case, our witches do find each other, but then they have to figure out how to break the curse. But then so every 100 years I set it on the year 1900, the year 2000. So then their coming of age at age 18 is when they were able to break the curse. So they meet in 2018, basically, and then are still in the series in the year 2020, which I kind of use in the book. And, people may take offense to it or whatever, but I use the turmoil of 2020 and blame it a little bit on this villain witch, Sonia, who's now an evil spirit herself. And so that was kind of an interesting thing for me to realize that I had done. Like, I was putting my characters through turmoil at the same time, like our human realm was in this turmoil. So I think that COVID first hit, everybody was like, what was going on? Even the characters in the story were like, oh, this is epic. This can't be, natural causes, right? There's this evil force working against us here. So that was interesting.
Sonia.
And Sonia, right. I didn't really plan it. Obviously, in 2017, when I started this, I didn't know what was going to happen in 2020. So I didn't plan that. It was just kind of a circumstance that it ended up being.
Or did you? And we're finding out now.
Well,
yeah. Yeah, aren't you the cause of COVID?
Uh-huh.
Well, okay, so this is very eerie because I also have a dystopian fiction book that I wrote in 2018 that was a worldwide pandemic book. And in that book, it was a flu virus that was spreading around the world, and it was in the future, so it was actually the second one in like 2 generations that this had happened, and they even blame it on the Chinese in my book. So that was kind of eerie, I have to say.
Oh.
Yeah, we know there's something going on here.
I may be a witch myself, so.
Yeah, big conspiracy.
I see.
Big conspiracy. Well, that's fantastic, I'll tell you. So what are you doing now? Are you doing a totally, you said the romance, is that kind of what you're working on?
Right. So I have a romance coming out in June, which is under Maria Jane pen name. So it's going to be called Perfect Secrets. And interestingly enough, like, it's called the Perfect Romance Series. And the title of this one is Perfect Secrets. But my romance is getting a little edgier as I go through, the characters and their stories in the different books, which has been a little bit interesting. But I also, like, on a outtake from the Realm Chronicles series, I have written a short story about a Nyx character who is a fish shifter character, so a human that shifts into a fish. And so I have that short story out, and I think it's going to be coming out in a couple of magazines in the near future. So I am thinking about usually my short stories end up being like, I develop full novels around those characters, so we'll see where that goes.
Your pen name or your real name?
So Tricia Copeland is the fantasy, where I write fantasy under, and then Maria Jane is the romance.
And why did you decide to use a pen name?
I went back and forth, and different people will tell you different opinion. You can find every opinion about whether you should do this or not, but I was really influenced by my grandmother and my late sister, and it's combination of their names. So I guess it meant something more personal to me than just deciding 50-50 whether you're going to use a pen name or not.
Yeah.
I gotcha.
Yeah. Yeah. And plus, I guess, that if you have regular readers doing you're doing one type of thing, also you come up with a romance book, and they just pick it up thinking, oh yeah, it's just Tricia Copeland. And they're thinking on one line, and all of a sudden they're getting this romance thing. They might be a little bit upset.
Right. So. I didn't want to read this. And my romance is not erotic at all. It is the fade to black closed door romance, but it is adult. It's more adult than the YA books. So you're going to get more adult content. So it might not be the same reader that's interested in reading the same thing.
Yeah, yeah.
So when I was doing romance, my pen name was Jack the Ripper, and it didn't work. I don't know why.
Yeah. Confusing. Maybe we ask AI.
Yeah, that was a good name, Jack, trustworthy. Well, listen, so, do you like to have readers interact with you? Do you like to get, emails and stuff like that? Do you have a website, social media? Where do people find Tricia? I
do. I love when readers contact me. So my website is triciacopeland.com, TRICIACOPELAND.com. And most of my handles are author Tricia Copeland or Tricia Copeland author on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. I have a great YouTube channel. I have a podcast of my own, Finding the Magic podcast. So all those episodes are on YouTube too.
Wow. Busy person. Keep on going. Well, we'll put everything up on our website as well so people can find you. And what can I say? Of Witches and Vampires. Kingdom Journals. Tricia Copeland. Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much. Nice to talk to you, Alan and Michael.
Nice speaking with you.
This has been a production of the House of Mystery Radio Show. To find out more about our show, guests, or hosts, go to our website at houseofmysteryradio.com.